So a bit of history first. There's no test. I'm talking about the township of Onslow, which was originally surveyed in 1810, and the survey of the northern part of Onslow, which is the part in Gatineau Park, was surveyed in 1830. The government was originally the District of Pontiac, but in 1850, Onslow itself started a municipality. And in 1875, the municipality split into three parts: Quillan, South Onslow, and North Onslow. And North Onslow is the part that I'm interested in. There was a railroad built up the Ottawa River about the same time as the one built up the Gatineau River around 1880. In 1975, Onslow was incorporated with the township of Erdley into the municipality of Pontiac. Now, the lots in Quebec were set up as townships, and the lots in Onslow have lots numbered 1 to 28, and the ranges are from 1 to 13. 1 is by the river, and 13 is in the north. And they're often half lots or quarter lots, and they're indicated by suffixes A, B, C, and D. Onslow is named after Arthur Onslow, who was a long-serving Speaker in the British House of Commons. Now, this map shows the Gatineau Park and in red, and it shows the lots and ranges of the park. So Gatineau Park extends from lot 9 to lot 28 of Onslow. It does not include a power line, which was built in 1928, and in the middle is Lac LaPêche. On the top is Wolf Lake. Here's the current road map. If you go to the municipality of LaPêche, it shows a lot of roads through this area, and I would say there's only one good road. That's the one that goes into the beach. So the road called Chemin Lac LaPêche, which goes into the north of the river and then goes up to Wolf Lake, is barely manageable in a car. I would say you'd need an SUV definitely for that. And the other roads, I think, are really meant for snowmobile tracks, not for automobiles. So I would not take a car in this part of the park. There were originally 2 proposals for this edge of the park. One was the proposal of Graber, and it's shown with the dashed line. And the other was the proposal of the park superintendent Richards, which was shown with a dotted line. And it was the proposal of Richards, which was eventually incorporated. The farmlands were pretty well established by 1890. And on the next map, I want to show you the cadastral map. I should say that the main concern about municipalities at this time was not water, was not sanitation. It wasn't even schools, it was roads. So they wanted to build roads. So this is the cadastral map of Onslow Township, the northern half. Gatineau Park basically consists, is shown in green here. I've got a little green line that you can see where the park is. And it basically goes from range 7 to range 13, and from lot 9 to lot 28. Excluded are 3 lots on the northern range 13, lots 26, 27, and 28. Those are excluded from the park. And the land north of Highway 366 is also excluded from the park. Now, I'd like you to look at the different roads, which I've illuminated in red here. About 2/3 of the way from the west side, you'll see a road coming up from Quillan. That's the Chemin Lac des Loups. And it goes, if you continue straight up, it goes into Swamp Road. And from Swamp Road, you can take a road up towards Lac LaPêche. And it was called the Curly Lake Road. And it is called the Curly Lake Road because it originally went to Curly Lake. So that's one of the main roads of the park. The second, if you continue, if you start again at the bottom on the same road and go up and turn left and continue well left to the boundary of the township, you're on Chemin Lac des Loups, and it goes up to Wolf Lake, which is in Oldfield Township. But the road I really want to concentrate on is the one that starts at the Catholic Church, which is on the left-hand side of the township, and it goes up on an angle and it goes into the park at about range 12. And that was a colonization road that was built in 1860. So it went up, that's called Hickey Road. It went up, Hickey Road continues up north into Oldfield, but then it turns right along this dividing line between lots 12 and 13. And then after 4 or 5 lots, heads south again between lots 11 and 12. And then it goes out towards Saint Louis de Macham on range 12 in the middle of those lots. The most astonishing thing about this map is the name of Lac LaPêche. It's not there, it's Wilson's Lake. And Wilson's Lake is the name that was given to that lake until about 1950. And it's certainly on all the legal documents. So if you look at a legal document for this area, it'll mention Wilson's Lake and Lac LaPêche in brackets, or Lac LaPêche with Wilson's Lake in brackets. So that was the legal name. The colonization road on the eastern portion is part of the Chemin Lac LaPêche, which goes up to Wolf Lake. And the part in the intermediate part within the park, south of Kelly Lake, is not that well defined these days. But John Gocher a month ago was up there, and he discovered this stove in the middle of wood. And I think you can see, if you look in the background, there's sort of an indication of a road. The colonization road was described in 1862 as this. They said they made it 6 feet wide in difficult places amongst the rocks, passable for a cart. And the expectation was that the farmers would make it 18 feet wide with the statute labor, which they did instead of paying taxes, I think, in those days. The total price for the road was $785. Now, when I started this project, I wrote a preliminary draft and sent it to John Gocher and said that nobody lived in range 7 within Gatineau Park. So I eliminated all those people from the discussion. But he was up hiking and he discovered some semblance of civilization around range 25, around lot 25. So this map here is showing the southern part of Gatineau Park between lots 6 and 7. And that's the steel line. And I've marked in where Chemin Wilson is. So that's, and at the top of Chemin Wilson and the steel line, which is the intersection, there's a habitation. Now, if you go to the right, to the left, at lot 20, you'll see the name Robert Wilson. And I think Robert Wilson, who was a councillor of Onslow, is the man whose name was given to the Wilson Lake. And you'll see just next to the hills, there's a road going down to lot 25. And I think that's how Wilson communicated with lot 25. And it was his son, Alexander, who actually lived at 25. He married the widow of Ambrose Milks. And you'll see the name Milks on lot 24 and 25 on the southern part. She had 4 children. They had more children. And he had a son, and the son had 2 sons. And they were the ones that sold the land to the NCC. So this is the steel line in 1874. And these were the signs of settlers that John Gocher found. He found 2 washing machines here. So this map on the right-hand side shows the intersection of Steele and Wilson. It shows 3 barns there. I've marked where he found the washing machines, and there were 2 buildings, which I guess were houses. And so it was the family of the descendants of Wilson that lived in this area of the park. I'm going to break the talk into 3 parts. It turns out that the southeast portion, which is the part that I'm most familiar with, it was never farmed at all. So the farming was all done in the southwest portion, in the northwest portion, and in the northeast portion. So I'm going to cover them in that order. It's a bit hard to read this, so I've turned this 90 degrees. So north is now onto your left. So lot 7, which is range 7, which is the first one on your right, had no one living in the park area. In range 8, there were 5 families, Gibbons and Dolan. Dolans were the first people to live here. Then Gibbons moved in around 1900, and then he died, and his widow married Michael Dolan, and he died, and she sold the land to the NCC. Next family on range 8 is the Farrells. They were on the Curly Lake Road. You can see it there. And their farm was towards the northern end of the lot. And the third was the Tracy family. Now the Tracys started in 1870 and they left about 1960. So they were, I guess, really the family that was the most in this area. Next, we have the family of Monjean and Kane, and they were there around 1870, but left soon after. And at the very top, I've got the name Fellows. Miss Fellows had a cottage there. She was one of the first cottagers in this area. Her brother was the collector of income tax for the government of Canada and bought the land, and she built a cottage. And I think it may have been on an island. I'm not sure. But anyways, that's Miss Fellows up to the very north, an early cottager. Okay, so returning to the south again, returning to the west again, on range 9, 10, 11, we see the name Michael Dolan and Patrick Dolan, 2 Dolan brothers. And then the next lot is that of the Maddens. And beside the Maddens, you'll see Leary. They had 2 lots, which were 200 acre. So in total, 200 acres. But those lots were kitty corner to each other. And when Leary died, his daughter married a McLaughlin, and McLaughlins owned the property. And next to them was the family of Doyle. The Doyles lived on the road which is heading towards Lac LaPêche. And when Bedelia Doyle, the daughter, married Richard Dow, and he took over the property and sold it to the NCC. By the way, the properties are, you can see the farmland because it's colored, it's got the cream color instead of the green. And the final family on that range was the Joyce family. They were around 1880, and then the Joyces moved to Quillan, and he had a store in Quillan and was a counselor and a very substantial member of the Quillan community. The next range, I've marked Lac LaBelle. This is not shown on any map that I know of, but that's what I was told is the name of the lake. And then again on the road, the Curly Lake Road, is Owen Doyle and Gibbons. And the final item that you'll see there is Oak Mountain, which is the site of a geodesic marking. I've got some pictures for this. First of all, John Curley. John Curley, 1812 to 1888, and his wife, Mary Allen. They were married in Richmond, Ontario. They had several children born in Ontario, and then they had children born in Lower Canada. So I presume they were born near Curly Lake. He left for Bristol Township in 1859, and there's no census of Onslow before 1861. So Curley left just before he would have been caught up in the census for Bristol Township. So the Curley Lake Road went to their property, and the information that we got about John Curley was given to us by Urban Curley of Quillan, who's 98 years old and is a descendant. So the next family was in the first lot. That was the Gibbons family. And this is Lucy Mayer. Lucy was born in 1893 and died in 1997. And Lucy Alphonsine Leontine Mayer. And her daughter Marguerite was born in 1916 and died last year. So they were both 100 years old, 104 years old at their death. So this is a picture of the Mayer Dolan property. You'll see they had a mailbox and a nice house. And she's obviously doing work during the haying season. Didn't do Lucy any harm. The next family that I have pictures of is the Tracy family. This is Christopher Tracy and his wife Margaret Curley. Margaret was a cousin of John Curley, and we have pictures of on the right hand side Lawrence Tracy, who was the son of Christopher, and his son Thomas, and various children in the property. And you'll see the standard method of transportation in this area, the horse. And the local parish priest, St. Bridget's in North Onslow, painted this picture of the Tracy home. And Bernie Tracy of Renfrew gave me a picture of it. And I guess you'll notice that it must be part of Gatineau Park because there's a good substantial hill in the background. Here's a picture of the Dolan home, which is in the NCC archives. And the last item I hear is, where's Oak Mountain? It's that little fingerprint that I've got, 2302. That's where you get that on that purple trail, which goes from Lac LaPêche up across the Curley Lake Road and then up to Oak Mountain. I haven't been to Oak Mountain, but it is the same significance in this part of the world as King Mountain is in Kingsmere. By the way, can people hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So turning to the northwest, we have the road starting on the lower left-hand side. There's the colonization road. And this map that I've superimposed everything on is a federal map of around 1950. So it's useful because it shows where the farmland was and where the forest was. If I do not have a name on the lot, it should mean that it was either crown land or just used for bushland. So I'm going to turn this one around as well. Starting again on the right hand side, we have McMahon's. They were only there for a couple of decades, and then members of the Hickey family moved into this area on range 11. And so you'll see 3 Hickey families, and as well as the Rady family. The range 12, lot 9, lot 9 is the beginning of Gatineau Park, has the name Hickey. And in both the census of 1861 and 1871, they're quite definite that Hickeys lived on this property. But the astonishing thing is that the land records have no idea that Hickeys were there. And in fact, when the land was traded with the NCC by the Quebec government, it was crown land. So lot 10 with the name Greer on. Greer was the only Protestant in the area. He was Church of England, and they were there again for a couple of decades. So the next name up is Glynn. There's a Glynn Lake, and that's where the Glynn family lived. So Glynns were settlers in there. Next to the Glynns, I have the name Charlie Gorman. The Gormans are really the dominant family in this area for 40 or 50 years. So he's the first member of that family, but there are other families there, Dolans, for example. And then we come to the Kellys. There were two Kellys. They both married sisters from Nova Scotia. And the one Kelly who I think lived here lived in Lot 13 by Kelly Lake. And the other Kelly, who's in range 12, I think he actually lived closer to Queon. So he owned the land, but he didn't actually live there. Then moving again up that range, we have LaSalle and Battison. LaSalle's, I think, farmed up here, and Battison's built a cottage on that particular lot. And then finally, at the very top of that range 12, we have O'Reilly. Hugh O'Reilly farmed on this property. Then we have Michael McBride, and his wife was a Benoit. And when he died, it was the Benoits took over that property. That's on the road from Wolf Lake down to Lac LaPêche. Now going to range 13, we have the name Fitzgerald. By the way, Fitzgerald, of course, is an Irish name. Fitzgerald's were on that lot, and as well, there was his wife was a Murphy, and there was a Murphy living here. Fitzgeralds were there for a couple of decades, and then Murphy took over the property, and then one of his descendants married a Hearn, and the Hearns had the property until they sold it to the NCC. So that property there, and you'll see that there's a road going there, and the road takes a sort of a curvy thing up to the highway north in the Oldfield. So that's lot 9. Lot 10 has the name McCann. McCann's owned a sort of an L-shaped lot, which was on that road. And by the way, the little purple dots indicate where there were houses shown on this map of 1950. Next family was the Kilbride family. Kilbrides originally were there, but then moved further east to the Wolf Lake Road. And then the Gormans. So Gormans farmed on this property, and this road that they were on is called the Kelly Lake Road, and it goes to Kelly Lake. And on this particular map, it goes to the west of Kelly Lake, and then continues down to the farm of Charlie Gorman. So Gorman's owned much of the property here. A lot of it was, I think, bushland. And at the very top, we see the names Daly, Portalance, and LaPêche. So Daly was the original settler here. And then Portalance, who was a merchant in Wolf Lake, bought the property, and then he sold it to Arthur LaPêche. And I think LaPage's may have farmed here, although I don't find a lot of evidence for it. But the sales documents said that they were farmers and that they lived in North Onslow. So that's the only way that could happen. And finally, the name you'll see is Sheehan. Sheehan owned most of the property along the Wolf Lake Road between Wolf Lake and Lac LaPêche. So it's quite a substantial property. So that's the northwest portion. The family tracing's all done because Alan Gorman, who's been a big help in this research, has this plaque in the church St. Bridget's in North Onslow, detailing the history of the families in this area. And it's got all the names of people that are very common in this area: of Foran, Murphy, McCann, Gilbert, Hickey, Gormans, Hickeys, and the original Irish settlers. All of the people were Irish on this, except for George Gilbert, who was Francophone. This is a picture of Dennis Gorman, which Alan Gorman gave me. And he gave me a picture of this, of their home, along with the transportation of those days and part of the family. He also gave me this picture of the family, but I realize now that this was not taken in North Onslow because I see bricks on the wall behind. And as far as I know, there were no homes with bricks in North Onslow. Perhaps it was taken at the church at a wedding. I'm not sure. My friend John Gosher supplied me with these two pictures. This structure on the left is still there. It's what's marked on the map, Old Hut, and it's south of Kelly Lake. And on the right-hand side, you'll see the remains of one of the Gorman farms, marked Old Cabin. So this is to the west of Kelly Lake. The Kelly Lake Road came in at the top in the middle of the map, and it's split into two, one part going west, one part going east. The east part went to a site that was a substantial cottage, and it was taken over for an interpretation center by the NCC. So these relics were taken, well, they're still there. And this is Kelly Lake. This is what's left of the interpretation center. I'm told that there's a septic tank here, but John Gosher hasn't been able to find it. So if he can't find it, I'm not sure. The interpretation centers, Gershon is telling me that he has another presentation plan that's going to talk about that. So I'll not talk about interpretation centers. And finally, I have this terrible picture of James Daly. This was taken from the 1975 Queen history book, and it shows James Daly standing in front of his the remains, I guess, of his cabin in a remote northern section of Onslow. By that we mean on the road between Lac LaPêche and Wolf Lake, holding his trusty snow in his hand, ready to defend to the last the remaining vestige of a once comfortable log cabin. So that's part two. Part three is the northeast portion, and this was very heavily populated and had, I think, pretty good farmland. I've given it the name Chemin de Roi because that appears on several of the documents describing this area. But certainly it's more commonly called the Chemin Lac LaPêche. And again, I'm going to flip this 90 degrees so I can talk about it so you can read the names. So here we go. A lot of folks lived here. And so we've already talked about Daly and Sheehan in range 13, the one to your left on the most northern. And the first family, the only family there is the Conlon family. Conlon lived here and raised a family, and he was the census taker for two of the censuses. And after he gave up farming, this land was sold to Élie Gauthier, who I think came from Wolf Lake. So the Conlons and the Gauthiers. I'm not sure if their farm was north. I'm not sure if the building was north or south of Highway 366. But anyways, they certainly owned this land. So that's range 13. That's the easy one. Now we come to the complicated one, range 12. I've already talked about O'Reilly's, McBride's, and Benoit. And the next one on range 12 is what I've called the village. This was where there were buildings built along the road here, 8 of them, and there were stores and there was a gas station. And I think it was mainly to service the people who were at Pellerin Point, which is straight south of there. Pellerin Road is just, you'll see the name Burke, and there's a road underneath the name Burke, and that's going down to Pellerin Port, which Pellerin Point, or Point Pellerin, which has a lot of cottages on it in 1960. And there's one cottage there now. So I've called that the village. That was certainly not the name that was given there. The next family, the village families were mainly Benoit. The next is Vaillancourt. The family name was actually Benoit de Vaillancourt. So we have Vaillancourt and then the Belille and Dubois in the next farm. Then Drouin. There are many Drouin properties here. Drouins were certainly in the 1860s census, and they're a bit hard to trace because some of them found going to the church in Saint-Cécile a bit hard, so instead they went to the local French Presbyterian church in Duclos, which was nearby. So some of the Drouins are actually Calvinists, in other words, Swiss Francophone Swiss Presbyterians, Protestants. The next lot we have is Sayre, Marlowe, and Millejour, which is a bit off the road, but they're certainly in the land records. The next families are Gertin, Cloutier, and Coder. And then we have the next lots are narrow lots. They're 100 acres wide. And the first family there was Gertin. Then Gosselin. Gosselin had a factory for making shingles. So he was an early manufacturer of shingles in the area. Then we have Baudouin, Moreau, then the family of Philippe, and there are many Philippes around. And you'll see next to the name Philippe, there's a road going to your right, which means going south, which connects to Chemin Sissens, which goes into the beach area. And it was all farmed by members of the Philippe family. Next to Philippe's, we have the Robert family, Zephyrin Robert, and they had quite an extensive farming operation you can see there. And the last family on range 12 were the Barnabys, and after them, the Martineaus. And as I said, the other farming areas are outside of the park. So now we go down to range 11, and you'll see the name Harrison. That's associated with the Haven, which I'll talk about in a minute. The next farm, which is a pretty big farm, is the Fournier Baudouin Lapierre. Fournier's first farmed it, then the Baudouins farmed it, and then Baudouin sold it to a relative, Lapierre. And I was very fortunate in this research to have the help of Hector Lapierre and of Niagara Falls, and Claude Lapierre of Kempville. Unfortunately, Hector died 2 months ago, but he was a big help in this area. The next we have Gilbert. Gilbert was the original settler. He had a weaving factory according to the 1871 census, and then he sold it to a relative Sheehan. They sold it to Baudouin, and finally they sold it to Pellerin. Now, Arthur Pellerin was an entrepreneur from Ottawa. He was born in the United States, but the family returned home to Granby, and then he came to Ottawa. In the 1910 census, he's a grocer on Bronson Avenue. In 1917, in the city directory, he was working at a salesman in a piano factory, piano company on Spark Street. And in 1920, he had his own business on Rideau Street, selling phonographs and Cassavant organs. Anyways, Pellerin gave up that business and came up here and bought land, and was quite a local entrepreneur and considered to be a millionaire by the locals. And it was he that built the cottages on Pellerin Point, and he also built he sold properties for cottages on the lake, and he also had a hunting camp. Now, the hunting camp was sold to Tim Burke. Burke had those hunting camps, but he also had jewelry stores in Ottawa. He was Tim Burke, and every morning he would drive to Wakefield and take the train to Ottawa, and then walk over to his to his jewelry shop on Rideau Street. Then we have the Drouin and Pellerin again in lot 7, and finally on range 11. Then we have the Philippe families: Alphonse Philippe, Georges and Ferdinand Philippe, Antoine Philippe, and other families as well. Part of the Robert family was there. Vaillant family on the near the edge of the park, and lastly the Bertrand family, which was right on the park boundary. Now, let's see, 13, 12, 11, 10, range 10. We have the Haven. I have pictures of that coming up in a minute. And again, we have Page and Henson. They were very late comers here. They built an Adnak Lodge around 1945 or 46, and they immediately sold it to the FTC. And in the sales documents, there's 2 pages describing all the fine silverware that was included in the deal. So I think this is where the NCC or the FDC in those days got interested in Lac LaPêche. It's because they had this offer to buy Adnak Lodge. So continuing along that range, we have Camp Gatineau. But the first farming family in there was the Lamarand family, and the Meunier family succeeded them. And then the land was sold for Camp Gatineau in 1960. And Camp Gatineau was a correctional farm built by the Department of Justice, which lasted for a few years and then has been turned into a camp for disadvantaged children. And the last lot on that range is the Bertrand, who originally owned that property, and Gervais, and that land is still private property owned by Gervais. His cottage is, or at least his house, his log house, is on the Sens Road, which is the road going into the beach. And he contacted me last year and said he was rebuilding his house. So that house is just before the gates that you pay to go into Lac LaPêche. And finally, in the next range, we have one family, the Pichette family, and they were on the road to Ben Lake. Now for a few pictures. This is the Conlon picture of the family. This was taken from Ancestry, and I think you can tell who was the boss in that family. This was Hugh O'Reilly's property, which then became Kilbride, and then finally the Benoit family, which is marked in blue. And there was a mill here, which I'll have a picture a bit later. School days. This is a picture that Hector Lapierre from Niagara Falls gave me. He is in the back row. He's the tall boy in the back row. The teacher was Adeline Joannis, and it's the kids around 1948 at a school. And this was at the corner of Pellerin Road and Chemin Lac LaPêche, or Chemin de Roi. And it looks like, I'm not sure what time of year, maybe the springtime. It looks a bit chilly. Maybe that's why everybody's got their arms folded. You'll see a nursery in the background, and of course the inevitable hills in Gatineau Park. And that must be the school. There were 2 schools built here, both run by the church in East Oldfield, north of here. This is the village. This is the 8 people who lived in the village. This line across the middle is the Chemin Lac LaPêche, and the line going down is the Pellerin Road. And you'll see where the school was on this map, and the 8 families that lived in the village with their gas station. There are more relics here. On the map of 1960 of the NCC, it shows 2 relic areas right in the middle of the map. And John Gocher followed into there to check up on the relics, and sure enough, they're there. There's a nice wall, and there's a broad area that obviously was used for farming. In the same map of 1960, I've marked in red where all the fences were, so you can see that the land was extensively used in 1960. Again, on that road, so this is on range 12 on the Chemin Lac LaPêche. We have the Philippe Cross, which is well known on the internet, and a very hard to read named explanation for that cross. I was told by Hector Lapierre that this was built in memory of a young Philippe who was electrocuted when he was working on a car during a lightning storm. And finally, I have pictures of the Martineau relics. This is the very first or the last, depending on which direction you're traveling, on the entrance to the park on Chemin Lac LaPêche. I have no idea if these buildings are here, but the pictures are certainly online. This is the Haven, and I've got a map that shows where the Haven was on the north. This is the north side of Lac LaPêche. Adnac Lodge is where the beach is, and across the way is the Haven. Pellerin Point, I've shown there, where the La Perriere farm was, and what I've called the village and the school up on the northern side. And this is Jack Harrison building the Haven. The land was originally bought by Eddie Cannon, who was an interesting fellow, which I think you'll hear about from someone else. And here's a picture of Jack Harrison on the left, his wife, his mother, his daughter, and his son, John Harrison. And the picture on the right is rather interesting because it shows the two main modes of transportation. Looks like an army vehicle. This was around 1950, an army vehicle with the trusty horse available. And I think the three boys are Lapierre sons. This is the mill. The mill was where the Chemin Lac LaPêche turns north to go to Wolf Lake. So it's on the water flowing from Otter Lake down to Lac LaPêche, and it was owned by various people, but it was called the La Belle. Although the first owner, as far as I can tell, was Armitage from North Onslow. So here's an extraction from one of the Ottawa newspapers of Arthur Pellerin with his phonograph bargains on Rideau Street. Here's an interesting picture which John Gocher took a month ago. This is the method used to control the flow of water from Lac LaPêche into the LaPêche River. And you go in there and you insert pieces of wood to raise and lower the water levels. This was originally built by the McLarens in Wakefield or Buckingham. And I guess the NCC has that job of looking after this now. Here's a map of the district east of the lake. It shows on the north side, I've got the Chemin Lac LaPêche. By the way, it shows a school just outside. That was the St. Cecile Church had a school there. It shows the water going from Wilson Lake onto the LaPêche River. You'll see where the river there. And you'll see a road going from north to south between lots 25 and 26, which I would call the Philippe Road because it was all Philippe families who farmed in there. The farmland has got the hatches, and the road going off to the east here is the Saint-Saëns Road. And if you follow that road in, you'll see that it originally led to a farm, a Philippe farm, and then when Hanson and Page bought the property for the Adnac Lodge, they extended that road down to the beach. Finally, the Pichette property was on the road to Bend Lake, and I have this picture of myself on Trail 68, which goes down to Bend Lake. So that's that. I don't think I'll bother discussing that. The northeast portion as I said, no, as far as I know, nobody ever farmed there, but there are tons of lakes or ponds, which are very useful for pond skiing in the winter. And they've been given these odd names by people. And I wish to thank the following people, which I will let you read, but I won't go through it. I should mention that Bernie Tracy of Renfrew was very helpful, Hector Lapierre and Claude Lapierre, and Alan Gorman and Urban Curley. But other people have been helpful too, including my daughter and grandsons, and especially the staff of the Pontiac Archives. And if you want to know more about this, you can read the article on this, which is on the Gatineau Valley Historical Society website under Family Histories. And it's the one called Pioneer Settlers in the Western Part of Gatineau Park. It's a PDF document, and this has all of the pictures and a lot more